Alright, so welcome back. So for this video, we're going to talk about research and build. So if I choose to do this action over here, if you choose to do research and build, you have some options that you can do with research and build. You can research and build you can research as many technologies as you want that you can afford to research, obviously. And you can build as many buildings as you want that you can afford, but likely you're probably only going to be able to afford one of each at most, and maybe only one of the two, who knows. So let's talk about building first, because that's something you're definitely going to want to do, for sure. So let's say I want to build one of these three buildings, the academy, the base, or the city. The first rule that you need to know that in order to build these buildings, two things must happen. Either you can build the building on your world ship, so you have these three slots here. One of them is empty, and the other one has power of 2 and a power of 3 on it. Your world ship this world ship for this race can only hold 3 of these buildings. However, the parasites of Screech, they have room for 4 on their world ship. So that's kind of interesting. So I could put a base on here on the world ship. I could put academy. I could put a city on there. But as you can see, there's only 3 slots. And if I want to utilize all of my buildings and build all of them, I obviously need another location for these buildings, right? Well, this is where attacking comes in. If you want to build a building on a world, you're going to have to attack it first and control it. That means this little green cube here is going to be, well, one of these little green cubes here are going to be sitting on either an inhabited planet or an uninhabited planet, okay? Now, on an uninhabited planet, you're only going to be able to normally build one building on an uninhabited planet, which means there's still lots of buildings here that you won't get to build if you can only do it on, obviously, in uninhabited worlds. Now, if you do build a building, whether it be on a planet that has aliens on it or a planet that doesn't have aliens on it, if an opponent attacks that planet and takes it from you, then you don't have to worry about losing the buildings that you've put on those planets, because basically they just get taken over by your opponent, okay? So you don't have to worry about putting them back here on your player board or something like that. So if you don't have to worry about that if you lose a world, okay? So that's something you don't have to worry about. They won't come back here and mess everything up. So that's something that's at least something to not have to worry about if you get attacked. But another thing to note is these buildings here, the bases, the reason why you might want to put at least one of these buildings on your world ship is because your world ship has no dice it can roll, and it has no power whatsoever. So if you want your world ship to be included in a battle, you have to at least have one base built and put onto your world ship, okay? That's something you're going to have to do if you want that. And then your world ship can be included in an attack, and then they would have 1 extra power, plus it can roll a dice. So that's something to note, okay? Obviously, maybe that's something to think about, putting some extra bases on your world ship to make it stronger. That might be a strategy worth doing. These other bases, the academy and the city, they have no real value. They don't really do anything on their own, not like the base at least. So putting them on an uninhabited world or a planet that has aliens certainly might be a better reason to do that. But if you do decide to put a base on a planet, you still get that extra dice roll and that extra power in defense of the planet. So that's really cool. You can use the bases here to defend the planets that you control. But obviously there's only 4 bases in total that you'll have access to, so you're going to have to strategically think where the best place is to put your bases on. Your world ship can only have 3 maximum anyway. Now, why do you want to build these buildings? Well, there's 3 different reasons. If you build the academy, it will unlock extra command. So that means you'll have to refresh less as often because you have all this extra command, okay? For every academy you build, you're going to get one extra command. You're also going to notice these symbols here next to the command, which is, this is, if I didn't explain it, this little symbol means command, this symbol means victory points. So when you score points, you're going to unlock even more victory points. Heck, look at this one. It adds 2 extra victory points right there. So you'd get 1, 2, 3, 4 victory points if you had built 3 academies. That is awesome. So if you're a player who's going to attack a lot, you're probably going to get some of these off your planet, okay? Or off of your player board. What about the bases? What do they do, besides the fact of adding power to your attack and defense? Well, they also obviously give you extra victory points, but they can also increase your hand size limit. So for the first base you build, it's going to increase your hand size limit for these awesome cards here, which are going to help you gain lots of influence and money and goods, all sorts of good stuff. It's going to increase your hand limit so you can have 4, and it's also going to give you an extra victory point. If you do a second base, it's just going to give you another victory point. If you have another base built, it increases your hand limit again, and the last one just has victory points on it. So at least a maximum of a 5 hand limit most likely is going to be the case for your player board. That doesn't mean you can't increase it other ways, but that just means that's the basic way of increasing your hand limit. Now over here, you'll notice there's the little triangle symbol with 5. That's the currency. If you recall, this is a triangle too. You'll also notice there's there's a symbol here that indicates 2 people. If you're playing with 2 players, it means every time this gets activated, you're actually going to get 7 credits, okay? You're going to get 5 plus 2 credits. What does that mean? Well, every time you use the action refresh, one of the things you're going to do is you're going to get currency depending on how many cities you have built. So if you haven't built any cities, you're going to get 7 credits in a 2-player game every time. But if you build a city, you're going to get 8 credits, because you're going to get 6 plus 2 credits. So you're going to get 8 credits every time you refresh. Plus, you're going to get an extra victory point when you do the scoring, when the scoring takes place. And I probably didn't mention this, but the scoring is going to take place twice in the game. It's going to take place somewhere in the middle of the deck, most likely, when the scorecard shows up. And then it's also going to take place when the game is over. Okay? When does the game over? When you go through all of these cards, that's going to trigger the end of game, and then everybody is going to get one more. They're each going to get that nice little token here to choose an action, and they're all going to get to do this one time, and then the game will be over. So that's basically what happens then. So every time you refresh, you're going to get extra money. If you have built a bunch of cities, you're going to get a lot of extra money that way. So that's something that's going to happen with that. But that's not all. In order to build these buildings, not only do you have to have a place to put them, you also have to have the money to do so as well. And so in order to build these buildings, it doesn't matter which one you decide to build, because they all have the same currency to start off with, it's going to cost you 3 plus 2 plus 2, so that's 5, 6, 7. It's going to cost me 7 credits just to build one of these buildings here. And then when you unlock one of these buildings, and you've built them, guess what? It adds another 2 credits to the equation, so it's going to get more expensive as you build. How do you rectify that problem, though? Well, one of the things these goods are good for is your buildings here. You can put a good and basically cover up that spot there. So if I hadn't built the first academy yet, and I put this metal goods here, I'd only have to pay 3 plus 2, which is 5 credits, which is a little cheaper than 7. So that means if I put another good here, I could cover that up, and the price would just be 3 credits. But of course, I would have to keep putting goods here if I want to keep the currency from getting too expensive. But here's another thing to note. When you're placing a goods token here, it has to be the same one as the first one you chose. So if I put metal here, I have to put metal goods on this location here for the academies. So I can't put life forms, and I can't put artifacts here. I think there's some abilities that could change that up, of course, But in reality, you can't do that. That wouldn't be allowed unless you have some sort of special ability that allows you to do so. I think there might be a player board, a player that actually allows you to do that. Ignore that problem. But that means you can put the other goods that you have to good use by covering up the other two locations instead. So, like, for instance, artifacts could go there, and life forms, which is upside down, could go, for instance, there. And then I'd have to keep putting life forms here, artifacts here, and metal there. And you can kind of choose how you want to do it. You might have a bunch of goods. You might have 2 or 3 goods before you decide to build a building. And so you might be thinking ahead of time where you want to put your goods, because maybe you'll be able to obtain more certain goods more than other certain goods. But that's just one of the things that these goods are good for. They're also going to be useful with technology. So building is just one of the 2 actions that you can take if you choose the research and build. The other one is research. So let's talk about research now. So these are the technologies that are available to you if you are playing as this particular alien race. And let me bring it up as close as I can so you guys can see it. So here we have the 6 technologies. We have cloaking and warbots. If I remember correctly, I think all of the players will have these 2 here. They're all the same, the first 2. Everyone has access to these 2 technologies, warbots and cloaking. Now, we won't really talk about what these technologies do, okay, because they're each different. The rest of these are different anyways for each of the different players anyways. But here we have quantum editing, we have binaural network, we have WorldShip Lab, and we have cybernetics. When you are able to research a technology, you're also going to get an extra victory point for each technology you've researched. Okay, that's something that's going to happen. Also, one thing I also want to mention is when you do complete, when you do scoring, if you have, you might have a bunch of these cards here, a bunch of these Empire cards. If you have a bunch of these Empire cards and you currently meet the qualifications on each of the cards, you're going to get extra victory points for every single one you've completed. And you can hold on to this. So, like, for instance, when I score for the first time, if I own at least 3 lifeform goods, I get 2 victory points. At the end of the game, if I own at least 3 lifeform goods, I'm going to get 2 victory points. So for me, maybe not using the lifeform goods right away may not be worth it for technology or for here, because I can get some extra victory points when I score if I hold on to my lifeform goods. Because if I'm using my lifeform goods for something else, then that won't count anymore. So I have to obviously plan ahead with these little Empire cards here too. But, however, it's not just simple as simply placing the good onto these technologies. You do need to put a good onto these technologies, but you also must discard a card with a particular power, or cards. You can actually discard more than one card, but it has to be equal or greater than the power indicated. So if I wanted to, for instance, if I had a life form and I wanted to activate this technology here called binaural network, not only would I have to have the good, the life form, and put it there, I would also have to pay a power card or power cards of 4 or more. So these are the power cards, and I happen to have one that's 4. So I'd have to discard this one as well to activate a technology. That's why you may not be able to activate all of your technologies at once, or more than one, because maybe you might have the cards necessary to do a bunch of technologies, and goods for that matter, but maybe you want to use these different types of power cards instead for what they actually do. If you complete this mission here, I get to place 1 influence on MROC, and I gain a victory point right off the bat. So I would get a victory point. That's cool, right then and there. If I complete this delivery here, for this card, I get to place 2 influence on Setna, and I gain 3 victory points. This one, if I complete this action, I get to place 2 influence on Tan Fu. So that's really cool. And this is something that you can actually do as one of the 5 actions. Okay, so that's something else to note. So that's really interesting too. But that's technologies. And remember, if you're going to put one of these buildings here on this, or this, you're going to have to discard a card of a power of 3 or more, or 2 or more, for that as well. But basically, that's what you will do if you choose that action, research and build. You're going to build buildings and maybe even do some technology researching. So that's what you can do as an action. So that's it for this video.